Hi students, today we are going to learn the topic supply and also try to understand the various concepts of supply. In this unit we are going to see the meaning of supply, determinants of supply, individual supply schedule and curve, market supply schedule and curve, law of supply, exceptions to law of supply, then movement along the supply curve which has two parts, that is extension of supply, contraction of supply, then shift in supply curve which also has two parts, that is increase in supply, decrease in supply, then elasticity of supply, and last measurement of price elasticity of supply. Let us begin with the meaning of supply. Supply refers to quantity of commodity which a producer or a seller or a firm is willing to sell in a market at a particular price during a given period of time. Let us understand the concept with the help of example. In this image, we can see Kamla is willing to sell 5 dozens of apple at a rate of 200 rupees per dozen in a day. If you look at this example here, first thing, that is the willingness to sell, Kamla is willing to sell. Then second one is quantity of commodity, Kamla is willing to sell 5 dozens of apple. Third one is price of the commodity, the rate at which she is willing to sell is 200 rupees per dozen, and the last one is given period of time. Period of time here is a day. So anything to call in supply should have 4 essential elements. First one is willingness to sell, then the quantity of commodity, third is price of commodity, and last is the period of time. So the example that we have seen, in that example Kamla is willing to sell commodity, then next one is quantity of commodity, she is willing to sell 5 dozens of apple, the price of that commodity was 200 rupees per dozen, and the last period of time she was willing to sell all these apple in a day. So that was in simple the meaning of supply. Next, let us move on to the determinants of supply. Determinants are the factor which influences supply. When we supply commodity in a market, there are various factors that affect supply or influences supply. Let us understand which are those factors which influences supply. The first factor which influences supply is the own price of a commodity. There is a direct relationship between price of a commodity and quantity supply. When price increases, quantity supply also increases. It happens because at higher price there are greater chances of making profit. It induces the firm to offer more for sale in a market and vice versa. That is, when price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. Second determinant is the state of technology. Advancement or improvement in technology lowers the cost at given level of output and raises the profit. As a result, investment increases, production increases, and supply also increases. Next determinant which affects the supply is price of factor of production or input. When the amount payable to factor of production and cost of input increases, the cost of production also increases. This decreases the profitability. As a result, the seller reduces the supply of commodity, and on the other hand, decrease in price of factor of production or inputs increases the supply due to fall in its cost of the production and subsequently rise in the profit. The fourth determinant of supply is goal of the firm. If the goal of the firm is to maximize profit, more quantity of commodity will be offered only at an higher price. If the goal of the firm is to maximize sale, more will be supplied even at an same price. The last determinant here is number of firms in the industry. Market supply of a commodity depends upon number of firms in the industry. When number of firms increases, supply also increases, and when number of firms decreases, supply also decreases. So next is the individual supply schedule. Let us go on to the meaning of individual supply schedule. Individual supply schedule refers to supply schedule of an individual firm in the market. It shows different quantity supplied by a firm at different price of a commodity. Next, let us move on to the schedule and understand this schedule. If you look at the schedule, we have price, we have quantity supply. When price is 10, quantity supply is 4. Say for example, 4 apples. When price increases to 20, quantity supply also increases to 8. Further, when price increases to 30, quantity supply also increases to 15. When price increases to 40, quantity supply also increases to 30, which clearly says that there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supply. When price increases, quantity supply also increases, and vice versa. When price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. Let us move on to the individual supply curve. What is the meaning of individual supply curve? Individual supply curve is the graphical representation of supply schedule of an individual firm in the industry. Let us understand this curve in detail. So, individual supply curve, we have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. When price is 10, quantity supply is 4 at point A. When price increases to 20, quantity supply also increases to 8 at point B. Further, when price increases to 30, quantity supply also increases to 15 at point C. When price increases to 40, quantity supply also increases to 30 at point D. And when we join all these points A, B, C, D, we get a curve which slopes upward from left to right, denoted by SS. SS means supply curve. This is an individual supply curve which clearly says that when price increases from 10, 20, 30, 40, quantity supply also increases from 4, 8, 15, 30. And vice versa, when price decreases from 40, 30, 20, 10, quantity supply also decreases from 30, 15, 8, 4. Which clearly says that when price increases, quantity supply also increases, and when price decreases, quantity supply also decreases, which shows a direct relationship between price and quantity supply. Now let us understand the next concept, that is market supply curve. Now the meaning of market supply curve. Market supply curve refers to supply schedule of all the firm in the market producing a particular commodity. Sum total of firm producing a particular commodity is called industry. So market supply schedule refers to supply schedule of the industry as a whole. Now let us understand this schedule. So in this schedule we have price of a commodity X, then we have quantity supplied by firm A, next is quantity supplied by firm B, and the last column is the market supply, that is the combination of firm A and B. If you look at the price, we have price that is 100 rupees. When price is 100, quantity supplied by firm A is 10. When price increases to 200, quantity supply increases by 20 by the firm A. When price increases to 300, quantity supply by firm A increases to 30. Then when price increases to 400, quantity supply increases to 40. When price increases to 500, quantity supply increases to 50. This is the quantity supplied by firm A. At the same price, quantity supplied by firm B differs. When price is 100, quantity supplied by firm B is 30. When price increases to 200, quantity supply also increases by firm B to 40. When price increases to 300, quantity supply increases to 50. When price increases to 400, quantity supply increases to 60. And when price increases to 500, quantity supply increases to 70. These are the two different firms selling different quantity, but when price increases, quantity supply also increases. The basic concept remains the same, that is when price increases, quantity supply also increases. Now look at the last column, which is called market supply. Market supply is nothing but the combination of firm A and firm B, or the sum total of the quantity supplied by firm A and firm B in the market. So if you look at price 100, quantity supply, that is the market supply, is 40. So how we got 40? 40 is the combination of firm A, that is 10, and firm B, that is 30. When we combine 10 plus 30, we got 40. Same way, when price is 200, quantity supply is 60, that is 20 plus 40. When price increase to 300, quantity supply is 80. When price increase to 400, quantity supply is 100. And when price increase to 500, quantity supply is 120. So how we got 120? 120 is 50 plus 70. So the market supply is the sum total of individual firms selling into the market, which clearly says that when price increases, market supply also increases, and vice versa. When price decreases, market supply also decreases. Let us move on to the market supply curve. Market supply curve is the graphical presentation of market supply schedule. Let's move on to the diagram. The first diagram we can see is the individual supply schedule of firm A. Second diagram is the individual supply schedule of firm B. And the third diagram is combination of firm A and B, that is the market supply curve. In first case is we can see when price increases from 100 to 400, quantity supply increases from 10 to 50. In second case, if you see in that is the individual supply by firm B, when price increase from 100 to 200, 300, 400, quantity supply also increases from 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. When we combine firm A and firm B, we got third diagram, that is the market supply curve. It is a combination of firm A and firm B, which clearly says that when price increases from 100 to 200, quantity supply increase from 40 to 60. When price increase from 200 to 300, quantity supply increase from 60 to 80. When price increase from 300 to 400, quantity supply increase from 80 to 100. And when price increase from 400 to 500, quantity supply increases from 100 to 120, which again clearly says that when price increases, quantity supply also increases, and vice versa. When price decreases from 500 to 400 to 300, 200 and 100, quantity supply also decreases from 120 to 100 to 80 to 60 to 40, which again says that there is a direct relationship between price and the quantity supply. Next, move on to the very important concept, that is the law of supply. Now first let us go on to the meaning of law of supply. The law of supply states that other thing remaining constant, quantity supply increases with increase in price of a commodity, and quantity supply decreases with decrease in price of a commodity, which shows again the direct relationship of price and quantity supply. Price increases, quantity supply also increases. When price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. Let us move on to the assumption. Assumptions are the few conditions which should remain constant so that the law functions properly. So which are these conditions which should remain constant? The first one is there is no change in price of factor of production. We assume that the price of factor of production remains constant. If the price of factor of production increases, then supply may decrease. In that case, the law of supply will not function properly, and vice versa. Second assumption is that there is no change in technique of production. Again, we say that the technique of production should remain constant. Why so? Because if the technique of production improves, or we brought a new technique of production, in that case supply may increases. In that, the law of supply will not function properly. Next is there is no change in the goal of the firm. The goal of the firm, that is sales maximization or the profit maximization, should remain constant. Then there is no change in price of related goods. The price of related goods should not change. And the last is no change in the number of firm. Why there should not be change in number of firm? It's simple. If the number of firm in the industry increases, then supply may increase. That's why if you want the law of supply to function properly, all these conditions or all these assumptions should remain constant. Next, let us move on to the supply schedule. Supply schedule refers to a table showing the quantity of commodity supplied at various price at a given time. So at given time, various price, what are the different quantity of commodity which will be supplied into the market. Let us move on to the schedule and understand the schedule. We have price of commodity X, then quantity supply. When price is 10, quantity supply is 100. When price increase to 20, quantity supply increase to 200. When price increase to 30, quantity supply further increase to 300. When price increase to 40, quantity supply increase to 400. And when price increase to 50, quantity supply increase to 500, which clearly shows that when price increases, quantity supply also increases, and vice versa. That is, when price decreases from 50 to 10, quantity supply also decreases from 500 to 100. So next we will move on to the supply curve. Now in this supply curve, let us understand the curve. We have x-axis, we have y-axis. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. We have 0. When price is 10, quantity supply is 100 at point A. When price increased to 20, quantity supply also increased to 200 at point B. Further, when price increased to 30, quantity supply also increased to 300 at point C. When price increased to 40, quantity supply increases to 400 at point D. And when price increases to 50, quantity supply increases to 500 at point E. When we join all these points A, B, C, D, E, we get a curve which slopes upward from left to right, denoted by SS. SS means the supply curve. This curve shows a direct relationship, that is, when price increases, quantity supply also increases, and vice versa, when price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. Next is the exceptions to law of supply. Law of supply states a positive relationship between price and quantity supply. Other thing being equal, however, in certain cases, the law of supply does not apply. These cases are as follows. Let's move on to these cases. First case is agriculture product. The law of supply is not much applicable to agriculture product, as their supply depends on nature and they are produced with a time lag. If due to bad weather condition the production is low, then the supply of goods cannot be increased even if the price is high. The second exception is perishable goods. As these goods cannot be stored for long time, so even if their price fall, the seller would like to sell more. Example, fish, milk, vegetables, etc. Third exceptions to law of supply is supply of rare goods. Supply of rare goods which are scarce in nature, like costly painting, rare coins, etc. Supply cannot be increased even if their prices are increased. Next exception to law of supply is disposable of old stock. In order to clear old stock, example, when season changes or for renovation of their stores, firms hold clearance sale. In this case, seller increases supply even if the prices are low. These are the exception. Next is non-availability of the resources. If production resources are limited, production and supply of the goods cannot be increased even if the prices are rising. These were the exceptions to law of supply. Now let us move on to the next concept, that is movement along the supply curve. It is also known as variation in supply or changes in supply curve. Movement along the supply curve refers to rise or fall in supply due to change in price of that commodity. Now, movement along the supply curve has two parts, that is extension of supply and contraction of supply. Let us move on to the extension of supply. The meaning of extension of supply is increase in quantity supply of a commodity due to rise in its price. It's called extension of supply, which means when price increases, quantity supply also increases. If you see the schedule, when price is 5, quantity supply is 10. Price increase to 10, quantity supply also increases to 25. Now let us move on to the diagram of extension of supply. So if you see extension of supply, we have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. P is the price. At price P, Q is the quantity at point A. When price increases to P1, quantity supply also increases to Q1 at point B. When price increases, quantity supply also increases. We have supply curve SS. So that is in simple called extension of supply. We move from point A to B on the same supply curve. So here it is the movement on the same supply curve. Movement is from point A to B on the same supply curve. This is in simple called extension of supply, which means when price increases, quantity supply also increases. Price increases from OP to OP1 and quantity supply also increases from OQ to OQ1. This is in simple called extension of supply, and here the movement is on the supply curve. Next we will move on to the contraction of supply. The meaning of contraction of supply is decrease in quantity supply due to fall in its price. It's simple called contraction of supply, which also means when price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. If you look at the schedule, when price is 10, quantity supply is 30. When price decreases to 5, quantity supply also decreases to 12, which means price decreases, quantity supply also decreases. Let us move on to the diagram of contraction of supply. We have x-axis, we have y-axis. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. We have 0. When OP is the price, OQ is the quantity supply at point A. When price decreases from OP to OP1, quantity supply also decreases from OQ to OQ1 at point B. We have the supply curve SS. Now if you look at here, the price decreases from OP to OP1, quantity supply also decreases from OQ to OQ1, and we move from point A to B on the same supply curve. Here price decreases, as a result quantity supply also decreases, and the movement is on the same supply curve from point A to point B. This is in simple called contraction of supply, which means price decreases, as a result quantity supply also decreases. Next we will move on to shift in supply, which is also known as increase and decrease in supply or change in supply. Shift in supply curve refers to situation of increase or decrease in supply even when own price of commodity remains constant. Shift in supply curve are caused by a factor other than price of a commodity, that is the state of technology, goal of the firm, number of a firm in the industry, price of related goods, etc. Shift in supply curve, there are two parts of shift in supply curve, that is increase in supply and decrease in supply. Let us first move on to the increase in supply. Increase in supply occurs when more is supplied at an existing price due to change in other factor. It causes a forward shift in supply curve. If you look at the schedule, here price is 20, at price 20 quantity supply is 10. Price remaining constant, that is price is constant 20, supply increases to 30 due to changes in other factor other than price. This simply says that price remaining constant, quantity supply increases due to change in other factor. Let us move on to the supply curve. Let us move on to increase in supply curve. First we have x-axis, we have y-axis. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. OP is the price, at price OP. OQ is the quantity supplied at point A. When price remaining constant, that is OP, quantity supply increases from OQ to OQ1. We have a forward shift in supply curve. The original supply curve was SS, and we have new supply curve over here, that is S1 at point B. We have a new supply curve and we have a forward shift in supply curve from point A to point B. So it simply says that price remaining constant, that is OP, quantity supply increases from OQ to OQ1 due to changes in other factor other than price. Next we will move on to decrease in supply. Now decrease in supply occurs when quantity supply decreases at an existing price of the commodity. It results in backward shift in supply curve. If you look at the schedule, price remaining constant, that is price is 10, quantity supply is 20. Price remaining constant, that is 10, quantity supply decreases from 20 to 10, which simply says that price remaining constant, quantity supply decreases. Let us move on to the diagram of decrease in supply. Again we have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. OP is the price, at price OP. OQ is the quantity supply at point A. SS is the supply curve. Price remaining constant, that is OP is constant, quantity supply decreases from OQ to OQ1. Here price remaining constant, quantity supply decreases due to change in other factor. We have backward shift in supply curve. New supply curve is formed, that is S1. We move from point A to B in a backward direction, and this is in simple called decrease in supply due to changes in other factor, price remaining constant. Next we will move on to elasticity of supply. The meaning of elasticity of supply is the degree or extent to which quantity supply rises or fall in account of slight change in price is called elasticity of supply. If you look at the formula, ES stands for elasticity of supply. Elasticity of supply is equal to percentage change in quantity supply upon percentage change in price. The types of elasticity of supply, there are three types of elasticity of supply that we are going to see. The first one is unitary elastic supply, next is relatively elastic supply, and the next is relatively inelastic supply. Let us move on to unitary elastic supply. Supply is said to be unitary elastic when given percentage change in price leads to equal change in percentage of quantity supply. In such case, elasticity of supply is said to be equal to 1, that is E is equal to 1. In simple, percentage change in price is equal to the percentage change in quantity supply. Let us move on to the diagram and understand unitary elastic supply. We have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. OP is the price, OQ is the quantity supply at point A. When price increase or decrease by 25%, quantity supply also increase or decrease by 25%, which clearly says that percentage change in price is equal to the percentage change in quantity supply. Here, for example, if price increase by 25%, quantity supply will also increase by 25%, and when price decrease by 25%, quantity supply will also decrease by 25%, which simply says percentage change in price is equal to percentage change in quantity supply, and here elasticity is equal to 1. Next is relatively elastic supply. When percentage change in quantity supply is greater than the percentage change in price, or percentage change in price is less than that of percentage change in quantity supply, then supply is said to be relatively elastic supply. In such cases, elasticity of supply is greater than 1. E is greater than 1. Let us move on to the diagram of relatively elastic supply. We have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis again we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. OP is the price, OQ is the quantity at point A. Now if you look at the price increased by 10%, and quantity supply, if you look at quantity supply, is increased by 50%. SS is the supply curve. Now here slight change in price leads to huge change in quantity supply, or when price decrease by 10%, quantity supply decreases by 50%, which clearly says that percentage change in price is less than that of percentage change in quantity supply, or percentage change in quantity supply is more than that of percentage change in price. Here elasticity is greater than 1. Next we will move on to relatively inelastic supply. When percentage change in quantity supply is less than that of percentage change in price, or percentage change in price is more than that of percentage change in quantity supply, then the supply is said to be relatively inelastic. In such cases, elasticity of supply is less than 1. E is less than 1. Let us move on to the diagram of relatively inelastic supply. We have x-axis, we have y-axis, we have 0. On x-axis we denote quantity supply, on y-axis we denote price. OP is the price, OQ is the quantity supply at point A. When price changes to 50%, quantity supply just changes to only 10%. For example, if price increase by 50%, quantity supply just increase by 10%. SS is the supply curve. Now here the meaning simply says that percentage change in price is more than that of percentage change in quantity supply. If price increase by 50%, quantity supply will just increase by 10%, or when price decrease by 50%, quantity supply will just decrease by 10%, which simply says that percentage change in price is more than that of percentage change in quantity supply, or percentage change in quantity supply is less than that of percentage change in price. This is in simple called relatively inelastic supply, and here elasticity is less than 1. Now let's move on to the last part of supply, that is measurement of price elasticity of supply using percentage method. In this we are going to calculate elasticity using percentage method. So we have the schedule, that is price in rupees and quantity supply in units. And price is 50, quantity supply is 200, price increased to 70, quantity supply also increased to 350. Now to calculate elasticity of supply using percentage method, we have 3 steps. The step 1 is calculating the percentage change in quantity supply. The formula to calculate percentage change in quantity supply is difference in quantity supply upon original quantity supply multiplied by 100. So here we require difference in quantity supply and original quantity supply. To get this, we have to first look at the schedule. Here original quantity supply is 200, then new quantity supply is 350. To get the difference, it's very simple, that is 350 minus 200, we got the difference, that is 150. Let's put this all units or figures into a formula, that is difference in quantity supply we got 150, original quantity supply we got 200 multiplied by 100. When we do the calculation, we got the final answer, that is 75 or 75%. So percentage change in quantity supply is 75%. In step 2, we are going to find the percentage change in price. To find percentage change in price, the formula is difference in price upon original price multiplied by 100. Let's find the difference in price and original price. Simple over here. Step 2, the original price we have already got, that is 50. The new price is 70. To get the difference is very simple, that is 70 minus 50. So the difference in price is 20. Let's put this figure into a formula, that is difference in price 20 upon original price, that is 50 multiplied by 100. Now when you calculate this, we got the answer, that is 40%. So percentage change in price here we got as 40%. Now the last formula, that is calculation of elasticity. ES stands for elasticity of supply is equal to percentage change in quantity supply upon percentage change in price. Percentage change in quantity supply we have calculated in step 1, whereas percentage change in price we have calculated in step 2. So the percentage change in price is 75% upon percentage change in price is 40%. So 75% divided by 40%, we got the answer 1.88. So the final answer is 1.88, which is greater than 1. So here elasticity of supply is greater than 1. That's why it is a case of relatively elastic supply. If your answer is equal to 1, then it is a case of unitary elastic supply. If your answer is less than 1, if the elasticity is less than 1, then it is a case of relatively inelastic supply. I hope you all must have understood the topic supply and also the concepts of supply. Thank you.